Okay, so we'll begin with today's class. So today we'll be beginning with JavaScript. Now, we have discussed HTML and CSS so far. We have looked into the various components, and we have learned new things in those languages, but they were coding languages. They're not programming languages. Now we have already developed front end. We have structured the website. We have styled it, but now we want the website to have a logic circuit. Basically, we want a brain for our website, and that is going to be done through a front end logic programming language like JavaScript. Okay, so now one thing, JavaScript is not just for front end. You can also use JavaScript as a backend programming language. For example, it can be used in like Node.js. Now, Node.js is different from JS. In front end, we use vanilla JS, not Node.js. Okay. Does anyone know what's the current version of JavaScript based on? Like the current most popular version. You can raise your hand if you know that. No? Okay, it's based on ECMAScript 6. All right. And now one thing before learning JavaScript, I'll quickly ask you all to open your VS Code and install some extensions. Firstly, you will need Emmet. Now, Emmet is inbuilt with VS Code, so you don't need it, but you will need it if you are using some other editor. Now, it's not mandatory, but I'm suggesting it because it makes autocomplete, because it autocompletes your syntax and it's very handy. Then you will need live server, and I think I've already made you install that in the earlier session. So in case someone has not installed it, please do that. And then we need JS ES6 code snippets. I forgot the name. This one. This extension, this can be used for running ECMAScript, JavaScript in your terminal over here. Now, why am I asking you all to do this? This is because otherwise you will have to open your console over here, and you will have to, like, once you save the program, since you have live server, it will be run here automatically, and you'll get the output over here. Now you can open this through two routes, either through this or by Control-Shift-I. I think there's one more shortcut, but I don't remember it, so I'll skip it. Okay, what's the console? Now this is the area where you will receive the output for your JavaScript code. Okay. Does anyone have any queries so far?
Yeah, sorry. I was AFK for the first bit. Can you please show me the extension once again?
Yeah.
The VSC extension.
This extension.
Okay, thanks.
Yeah. And I think you all should also install code runner. Okay. Just to clear things up, I said something wrong. This extension is not for running it in the terminal. This is for auto completion. I forgot the extension name. It was Code Runner, but nevertheless, you will need this extension for auto completion. Once again, I'm sorry about that. This is the extension for running things in terminal. So this can be used for various programming languages. Obviously, you can see it's written over here. You can use it for several programming languages. Yeah, and yeah. So install this one. Yeah, if anyone has any confusion regarding the which extension does what, you can ask me, because I messed up by saying the wrong one over there. If not, then I'll continue. All right, then I'll continue. Okay, so the console, so this is the area where you will get the output. Okay. Now a couple of things. How will you get the output over here? Okay, so since you can see, I want to use JavaScript for both my this area, white area, and then the console area. but the command for getting the output on either sides is different. I'll be strictly talking about the console, and when Shivansh will take over, he will teach all how to use JavaScript to change stuff in your website. Okay. So the first command is console.log. Now, what does this do? Console.log will basically ask your console area to log the whatever you wanted to log in this output area. So let's say I wanted to say hello world. You can see over here that what I did, what I wrote over here got logged over here. So this is a string, by the way. I think you all know what a string is, right? If anyone doesn't, then you please raise your hand, because we'll be discussing data types or going over it much more thoroughly if people don't know it already. Okay. Yeah, so this is a string data type. And just wait a minute. All right. So you want to create a JavaScript file. How will you do that? The extension for creating JavaScript files is .js, and conventionally it's named index.js or main.js. Right now, I can obviously use only JavaScript, and I can use it in my website also. So if I want to link my JavaScript file to my HTML file, how will I do that? I will do that using the script tag. Okay. Okay, JavaScript can be linked to the HTML. Either it can be linked to the HTML code, like, or you can write it directly inside the HTML file. Firstly, let's say I want to insert JavaScript in my code, or just get something over here, but I don't want to create another file. So I'll use the script. I'll write the code inside the script tag. Now this is handy when you want to make small code snippets, but in case it's a very large file, then I'll suggest I'll make a separate file. So I can do console.log. This is the session on JavaScript. Now you can see that the output is over here, and obviously the command will not be reflected over here because the code was in the file, not in the console area. Now, if I want to link my JavaScript file, I'll use the script tag once again, but I'll use script src. The src region will contain the src attribute will contain the link to the JavaScript file. Okay, now I have linked those two files together. And now if I write anything over here and I run it, it will work. Okay, you can see the output over here. Now, one thing, the output over here has a different color than the previous one. This is because they belong to different data types. I'll be coming over data types soon, so don't worry about that. Now let's talk about variables. Does anyone know what a variable is? You all can unmute and answer things in the class. It's very helpful for us, because then we can know that people know the things. If not, then I'll continue. Okay, there's no reply. Okay, so a variable is used for storing information or data, as you can say. In case, yeah, Sabyasachi, it's not a problem. Okay, so we have three types of variables in JavaScript: var, let, and const. The command for this is control/, to like make it a comment in case anyone has forgotten or doesn't know already. Okay, so what's the fundamental difference? Now I'll introduce this concept called scope, and there's also a fundamental difference in the declaration. Now let's say does anyone know any other programming languages like Python or C++? Please raise your hands if you do. Anyway, okay, so let's say I read this and I save this. Now this is a variable and this is unset. So if I do console.log car, and you can see I get an output over here called undefined. This is because the variable called car has no current value assigned to it. Also, this semicolon in JavaScript, after such statements, you'll have to put a semicolon in the end. It's not necessary, you can avoid it, but it's very good. It's a good practice to use it. That's why I'll suggest that each one of you use semicolons at the to terminate the statement, the sentence, not the statement. Okay, so and now look at another piece of code. I'll copy this and paste this. Now, can anyone tell me if it's right or wrong? Like, should I do this? Is this good practice? Or is it even correct? Okay, no one will, so I'll continue. Okay, so we can, no, it's not undefined. Yeah, it's undefined. That's a problem. Obviously, I'll discuss it. But the first issue over here is we already have a variable in the scope. Now, if we talk about scope, I'll have to introduce a ladder structure. So let's say you have a ladder, you have this row, okay, and this is your global scope. Okay, scope as in anything inside this area is accessible to any branch it might have. So let's say this main row is branching out into these 5 areas. Okay, and these 5 areas can further have sub branches. That's not a problem. So let's say it's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Now this main area has 5 branches called 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. And let's say this area 1 has 2 more branches called 1.1 and 1.2. Okay, now what do you think? Anything in this area, in this main area, will be accessible to all the areas, right? Why? Because it's global. But let's say if I have something over here, if say I have something in this area, it is only available for that area and its sub branches. Why? This is because it's in the local scope, it's not in the global scope. Does anyone find this confusing so far? If so, please speak up because I know global and local scope is kind of confusing for beginners. I'll continue teaching if no one has any problem. So please say if you have any issues so far. Okay, since no one has any issue, I'll continue. So we have a global scope and we have a local scope. It's actually called lexical anyway. So var, this keyword is used to declare global variables. Whereas the let keyword, it's an inclusion, the newer version of JavaScript, which is ES6, and after that, it's used to declare local variables or lexical variables, which means that if I have anything declared under var, and let's say that we declare a var car, this var car is declared under this area 1.2, but it will still be accessible to the entire program because it's global. Although it's declared under this sub branch, it will be available to the entire code because it's been specified as global. But on the other hand, this thing car let car is only applicable for the local scope. So if I have let car in this 1.2 sub branch, then it will only be accessible to it and its sub branches. Does anyone have any issue with this so far? No. Okay. Yeah. And okay, so we were wrong in over here because of two reasons. One, because of that, the scope issue. Yeah, so by default we can only have one thing, we can only have one variable in our any scope which takes precedence. Now I have var car, and this is in global scope, so I cannot have another variable called car, even though the keyword used to declare it as different. Okay, however, I can have this. Okay, now there's no issue over here. Why? Because these two are in totally different scopes. Now now I have logged this console.log car, which is doing that for this one. This is in global scope, and this is in the outermost region, which is the, so that's why it's logging whatever is available for it. But let's say if I write console dot, you might think because the program is reading it from the top to the bottom, that's why it's not printing BMW. But I can again paste it, and you can see that it's showing undefined two times. Why? Because functions have a different scope. A function is considered to be a sub branch inside the main branch, and I'm only using branch as a way to explain. It's actually not called a branch anyway. So when I'm doing this, I'm actually printing the value of the car variable, which is available, but this is not available. Why? Because it's only in the local region. But what if I had done this? I'm just writing anything at this moment. Now you can see that this is causing an issue. Why? Because this is not defined now. This is in the local scope, but I want it in the global scope. That's why you'll have to use another keyword to access it. Now I'll leave it on you all to find out how you can access this from the local region for the global area. Now I'll discuss const. Now one more difference. I can do all of this, but I can't do this. Let car, and you can see this works, right? And now mm, this works, right? I'm updating the value of this variable, and this is not giving me any error. Why? Because we can update values for variables declared using the let keyword, and same goes for the var keyword. If you declare a variable using the var keyword, then you can update the value. But what if we want to have a variable whose values cannot be updated? Now, why in what scenario would you want this to be the case? You would want this to happen when you want something to be static. Let's say you have to define links or something that's like, you want, or something is a potential security risk, or let's say you have a key which is used for accessing some restricted area in your website or your code, and you don't want it to be changed, then you will use the const keyword. The keyword is const, and just like let, const is also, what do you call it? Const is also a lexical. Const also has lexical scope. So if I declare const car, first of all, this is wrong. I will see this identifier car has already been declared using the let using let. That's why I cannot do that. I can, however, do this. Once again, you'll have this error over here because const has to be declared, and it has to be assigned the value right away. Otherwise, you'll get this syntax error. So I'll quickly do this. And now it's not an issue. And I'll print it. Okay. Now this is not a problem over here. I can definitely print it over here. But if I try to update the value and then I try to do the same thing, I'll get this error. Why? Because it's declared using fonts, so I cannot update the value. Does anyone have any problems so far? No. Okay, so I'll be going over some naming conventions now. Now there are some rules for for naming a variable. We have now. Okay, you cannot have a variable called const because it's already a keyword, right? It's a reserved keyword. Okay, so if I do something like this, just a minute. If I do var const, then you'll see this unexpected token const. That is because const is as reserved, it's a reserved keyword for JavaScript. Similarly, there are several reserved keywords. You can find all the reserved keywords for JavaScript here. In the W3 Schools website, there are several reserved keywords. You don't need to remember it every time, but I'll I'll obviously suggest that you'll give this a quick reading so that you know some of the words you cannot use. Right? Should I'll actually send the link in the chat. Yep. And that's why you cannot use reserved keywords. Now, one more thing. Now, the naming conventions, you can have a we have four naming conventions actually. Camel case, what does this mean? Okay, so you have a variable. Now, often you will find that you are using very long variable names so that it's easier to read the code. Now you can definitely have a variable called var air, like something else like that. But if you have a if you're writing lengthy pieces of code, then you'll obviously want to stick to something which is understandable, right? So let's say if you're writing a program to auto update stocks or something else like that. So you can obviously have a variable name var update currency or something else like that. So in that case, you can follow these naming conventions. Now, what is camel case? In camel case, we have multiple words written together without spaces, but the first character of every word is in capital, except for the first word. So this would be something like if I write if let's say I'm writing a variable whose uh, whose name is camel case, so that would be something like this. It could be this. It could be, or if you have few or more words, then you can have something like this. So this is called camel case. Now we have Pascal case. The Pascal case is similar to camel case. The only difference is that every word has to begin with a capital letter. Also, these are not rules, these are just naming conventions. So it's not hard, it's not a hard and fast rule that you have to follow this, but I'm just discussing it so that you all know it. So this is what it would look like in Pascal case. Now we have snake case, in which we use underscore uh, to make words distinct. Now it would be something like this, or so this is how you write variables in snake case. And then we have kebab case, where you use a hyphen. So that would goes like so. This is how you would write something in kebab case. Now, one thing you cannot have compound words separated by a space as a variable name because it's not identified. So let's say if you write something like bar, so I'll actually write something bar car name equals to uh, and you'll get an error over here, an unexpected identifier, because this is not a legal syntax. This is an illegal syntax. What could be correct? This would be correct. You won't get any error right now. But then again, like I said, if you have compound words, then it's better to use one of these four naming conventions. So I generally use the camel case. Like most of the programmers generally use camel case. So you can use this name. Obviously, it's not going to give an error over here. Does anyone have any queries so far? No? Okay. All right. Now, several more things. Your variable cannot begin with a number. So let's say your variable, first of all, it cannot be a pure number. So if I write this var 123 equals to hello, and I'll get an error because this is not a legal syntax. And then I cannot have var 123 hello, even though I can have a variable called hello. It's not illegal, but I can't have a variable called var123 hello. This is not acceptable, but I can definitely have the number after the variable. So this is accepted. Another thing, your variable cannot begin with any special character except for dollar and underscore. This is underscore, and we can have a variable called var underscore equals hello. This is not illegal, but then in several cases, an underscore is used for like some, if you are using some libraries and the underscore is used for a special case. So I would suggest that you do not use that. In case anyone's here from Python, then they'll obviously know this already. But yeah, and then you can also have a variable named dollar. This won't be legal. And then you can have something like very var dollar 1234. This is actually acceptable. And obviously you can have both of these together, and you can have something like this. And if I print this, then you'll get the value over here. This is acceptable. Okay. Does anyone have any queries? Otherwise, I'll move on to data types. Okay. Also, one more thing. JavaScript is case sensitive. So I showed you that you cannot have two variables with the same name in the same scope, but you can definitely have them with the same name if they are slightly different. So I can have var name equals to let's row it, and I can also have var name equals to Rahul. And then when I do this, that's name. And if print it, I'll get both of these over here without any error. Why? Because it's case sensitive, so it's treating this and this as different variables because the first letter uh, obviously begin with a capital. With the first letter is capital in the second case, whereas in the first case it's lower. Uh, if you know like Unicode and ASCII code and all those things, then you'll probably understand why these are treated as something different from each other and not the same thing. And I think you'll know it because you have already done classes. Classes as in the CSS classes and all. And now we'll move on to data types. Now, does anyone know what data types we have in JavaScript? And this time I'm not going to begin until someone speaks or someone answers. I'll sit around, I'll not do anything unless I get an answer. Like it could be wrong. I don't care. I just want an answer. Okay, so three we have gotten three data types from Stella. These are numbers, string, and undefined. All right. So now basically we have two types of two grouping categories that are called base data types and derived data types. Now it's also called primitive data type and reference data type. I won't go yeah, Boolean also. I won't really explain why it's called primitive and reference because is it's slightly complex, but I'll just go over the few commonly used data types. The first one being string. Okay. Var a equals to now this is called a string data type. Now also I'll tell you all one thing. I'm concatenating this, by the way. It's not really suggested. Concatenation is kind of bad. Anyway, so this is our code. Now this is a string, by the way. Okay, hello world is enclosed within these double inverted commas. This is a way of telling JavaScript that you are declaring a string. Now, obviously, I could have just written var a, and then the next step I could have defined it as I could have updated the value to hello world. Now that would have been acceptable, but it's not necessary. I assign it a string value. I could have also assigned it a number value. Why is this possible? Now JavaScript is flexible. It's a flexible programming languages, which means that you can update the value of a variable without the restriction of following a certain category. So let's say if you are from C++ or Java, then you will know this. In C++, if you have to write a string, then you have to specify the data type string, which is str. String. But in case of write var or const or let, now you know the use case of const is restricted, so let's keep it aside. Anyway, so you write the keyword and the variable name, and then you can at least in case of let and var, you can update the values later on, and this works. And I can obviously copy this, and now I'll introduce another one, which is number. And now I can copy and paste this. Okay. So over here, you see the first, okay, one thing, it's an operator, type of operator. What this does is it tells you the data type of that variable. So I'm doing type of A. What this does is it tells me the data type of this variable A, which is string in the first case. Now in the second case, it's going to be number. Now we don't have character data type and decimal, or like what do you call it, floating or double data type in case of JavaScript, because any number is treated as a number. So I can have this, and it's still going to be number even though even though it has a decimal, and even if hello world, instead of hello world we have an h, and then we did this, we'll still have it as a string because it's treated as a string. It's not treated differently. This is one of the major benefits of having using JavaScript in case of developing front-end apps or something like that, even for back-end development, obviously. And does anyone have any issues so far? If not, then I'll proceed. No? Okay. Acha. So now we go. Now we do Boolean values. Now, does anyone know what a Boolean value is, or what Booleans are? I'm pretty sure class 11 people with computer science will know it. Yep, true and false values. That's correct. True and false, which can also be represented with 0 and 1. So, yep. Now, okay. So why would you want a Boolean value or true or false values? Let's say you want to make a system to check if something is running or not, or whether to stop it or start it. Let's say you want to create a if you want to create a program which checks whether a username already exists in that account in the list, and uh, if it doesn't, then you will be then the user can create that take that username. If it does, then the user cannot. So let's say you will write the a program which takes the what the user wants to use as a username, and the program checks if the list has that name or not. Let's say it does, then it will return true, which means the program cannot proceed further. It will return to the user that they have to pick some another name because the name is already in use. But let's say it returns false, then it means that the name can be used and the user can proceed. In such cases, you will want to use true or false. It can also be used in cases of flags. Now, flags are like checkposts if you want to run sub processes and make them stop when a certain condition or criteria is fulfilled. Then you will want to use Boolean values. Okay, so 0 represents false and 1 represents true. Technically, 0 and 1, it's a binary combination. And like 0 represents low current and 1 represents high current. I won't be explaining any further about the current thing because it's not a computer science class. Does anyone have any questions so far? All right, I'll proceed with this. So I'll write var case equals to 0. I can also write false, same thing. And then I'll just copy and paste this. Let me check this. Okay, I don't think I can have this reserved here probably. Flag this variable, the false value is Boolean. Okay, I could have also done this. 0 is number. I'll 0 is number, by the way. You'll have to specify Boolean and like 0, just false. Yeah. So one thing in JavaScript, since we it's flexible. So if you just write 0, it will give 0 as a number, obviously. But then you can use the Boolean, like you can use this construct and then change it from number to Boolean. And since 0 translates to false, you will get this output as false. Was this bit understandable to you all? Yeah. Yeah, okay, then I'll proceed. Now we will talk about arrays. Now, why would you want to use an array? First of all, what is an array? Does anyone know what's an array? Let's speak up. Yep, it's a okay. So Ankit Saha has answered. It's correct. It's a collection of items stored at a contiguous memory location. All right. So in case you are from C++ background, then you have to declare the type of array because it's not flexible. But in case of JavaScript, you have the freedom to include any type of value inside your array. Now, list is the variable name. Okay, do not confuse it with a list from Python because in Python arrays are called lists. That's why I'm specifying this. Okay, and now you can see this. This is how you'll get the values. So this list variable, which is an array, contains these four values. Now it's not necessary that you have a compound list. You can also only have numbers. You can have Boolean values. You can have any independent values such as string, number, or Boolean, or you can also have sublists. Okay, so you can have something like 1, 2, 2, 3, and this would be acceptable, and then these lists would have their sublists, and you can check the structure over here. Yeah, so why would you want to use an array? Okay, so the use case of array is interesting because arrays are generally used when you want to store data in such a way that you have a single variable which is storing all the several values for the similar case. Now let's say you want to store the marks of 100 students from a class. How would now you can actually, no, this is not a good example. So let's just take 100 cases. So you're performing an experiment 100 times and you want to note down the values 100 times. So we'll have var uh, test equals to, and this is declaring that this is here we have declared that it's an array, and now later on I can update this array and include values for those 100 test cases, and then I can take out average or perform anything else on this. Okay, and now if I do console.log type of test, and I'll get an object. Why? Okay, now in case of JavaScript, symbols, null, and then arrays, objects, functions, and dates are treated as an object. Now, don't confuse it with objects in the object-oriented programming segment. This is a confusing bit. I'll suggest that you'll go over this segment, the object segment, later on your own, because we won't be dealing in depth with object-oriented programming for JavaScript, at least, because we'll do that for Django, but not for JavaScript for now. So I have specified that right now. So the type of this object, okay. Now, keeping this aside, and if I just try to print this, I'll get an empty array. But let's say I want to change. No, let's say I don't want to keep it as an array anymore. I want it to be a string. Now I can copy this. And you will see I'll get this, and I'm not getting a list anymore. Why? Because JavaScript gives you the freedom to reassign values or data types to a specific variable, but only for variables declared with the var or let keyword. All right, so now that's done, and yeah, that's so. In case you'll want to use arrays when you want to store multiple types of data for a single thing. Um, or let's say you have a variable called car in which you store all the cars you own, like the names of all those cars you own. Yeah, and then we have something called an object literal. Now, what's an object literal? Now, does anyone find this object a bit confusing? If so, then please reply. in the chat. I think that everyone's understanding. But so this is. Does anyone have any?
Hello, Gaurav.
Yeah.
Yeah, I had a tuition, so I was late.
Okay, that's not a problem.
And
So
also, Zoom on phone sucks.
uh, I can't help that. Okay, so we have object literals now. What are object literals? Does anyone know dictionaries from Python?
They are, I guess, imported text files.
No, dictionary data type.
No, that I guess.
If anyone knows the dictionary data type from Python, then you can speak up. It's like object literals are similar to that. Ankit sir, do you want to speak up? Yeah, you can unmute yourself and speak in the class if you know what it means and you want to speak. Yeah, it's fine. You can obviously write in the chat. But meanwhile, I'll continue teaching this bit. Console.log, it's getting right, console.log everything. And I'll get this. Yep. And now you can see how this works. Over here, you'll have a keyword and then you'll have its specific value. Now, why would you want to use an object literal? Now, again, the use case of object literals is quite interesting. Can access data using index name yeah. So let's say uh, it's like a dictionary. You know how in a dictionary, if you search a word, then you find the word and its consequent meaning. So let's say this literal was a sort of a dictionary. So I can have this word called uh, ABC. Like in your dictionary, there is a word called ABC, and then it has a certain meaning, just anything. Okay, and ordered and changeable, no duplicate numbers. Yes. Okay. So now you can see this over here. I'll close this. We have something inside our dictionary with this thing. I've just written anything. So this is your keyword, and that keyword has this assigned value. Now, why would you want to use this? Let's say you have a dictionary of you have an array. Let's say you have an array. Um, this might get a little complex. Var students equals to, and so you have an array which contains dictionaries. So something like this. This is very common. It's a very common use case. So students, and then let's say we have something called name. So let's say we have Ankit Saha as a student. No, by the way, since it's a string, so I'm writing it inside the double inverted commas. Ankit Saha, and then we have this another keyword called age. Student age. I'm just writing it. Or I'll have to put a comma by the way. So yeah, again to separate things in an object letter, you'll have to put a comma, and I can repeat this. I can copy this and then I'll paste it over here, and I'll change it to, let's say, Stella Day, and then I can change this to 113. She is 113 years old. Okay,
Yeah.
and then I'll log this data. Okay, so firstly we get firstly, we get this. We get an array which stores these object literals, which indeed contain data about that particular student. So you have a list of all the students, which now in the list there are object literals. Now each object literal contains the data regarding that particular student. So this first one contains information about a student called Ankit Saha and then his age, and can further add more keywords and values, which will just provide much more information. Now this is a very common structure in JSON files. Does anyone know what JSON files are? Does anyone? Otherwise, I'll skip it because it's an extra bit for now.
Yeah, better.
Okay. Martishman doesn't know JSON files are. I think I should take over vice president post then. Anyway, yeah. So I'll skip the JSON part for now. No, Artishman, I'll discuss JSON files later on because we only have limited time today and we want to cover a lot for now. Yep. So this is a use case of object literals, and again the type of is object for object literals. Yeah, there's something. Okay, so the data type is object once again. Now this is the reason why I'm asking you all to check out what are uh, why these are called objects in JavaScript. Now there's a very good, I think there's a very good explanation. It's just slipping from my mind right now, but yeah, it can be really confusing for now. So I'm not going to go in depth with it or something else like that. And then we have another data type called undefined. Now, I think you saw something as undefined. Now, when I declare a variable, let's say A, and I don't assign a value to it, and then I try to print it, then the output over here is undefined because no specific value has been assigned to it. But I can also assign a value called undefined. And now if I do even then I'm getting the undefined value. So undefined value, why would you want to use it? Now let's say you have a variable which doesn't which we, for which you don't want to assign a value. So you'll just write var and then move on. But you will use the undefined case in case of let or in case of const. You see, I cannot uh, not assign a value to a variable declared using the const keyword, but I can do that. But I can assign the undefined value, which is technically the same thing, but then you got the point. I think go Google. Yeah, you can check out the reason for these things on Google. Since JavaScript is based on ECMAScript 6, it has to follow certain rules for ECMAScript 6, and on top of that, they have their own rules. Now we have other data types like symbol, which is slightly complex. So I'll leave that on you all to explore, or we might go over it in the later sessions, but not today at least. Then we have functions, which Shimansh will be teaching. We have a data type called null. Okay, now this is very interesting. Var var name equals to null. Console.log. So this is why would you want to use null? You'll want to use null in certain specific cases only. Now null is, I think it's pretty evident that null means that you don't want to assign a value to it, but then you want to have that variable. Now why don't you think I have undefined over there? Well, there are separate cases, there are special cases where you would want to use this, but then again, even then the type of is okay. So the type of is object. Once again, this provides you with one more reason to check out what are objects in JavaScript and how are they not the same. And by an object literally is called an object, but then also other things like arrays are called objects. And then we have something called new date, which is like an inbuilt function sort of. So I'll leave that on you all. New date can be used for getting the date and all those things. I think that's pretty evident from the name itself. Does anyone have any questions so far? Otherwise, I'll move on to operators and all. What's the difference between null and undefined? Okay, now that's why I'm asking you all to check out the difference. So undefined it means that it doesn't have an assigned value, but null means it has an assigned value, but that assigned value is null. Um, there are certain cases where you would want to use it. If I declare a variable var a and I don't assign a value to it and I move on, the assigned value to it is undefined, which means that it doesn't have any specific value so far, so it's undefined. But I can have, but if I declare a variable a equals to null, it means that the value assigned to it is null, which means you have assigned it a value which is none. I think this you will note this if you know Python. There is something called none. This is basically something which is returned when you have no specific output. So let's say you have a function which is not returning anything. Then I'm talking about Python right now. So that would return none, right? So it's similar, but it's not exactly that. Does this make any sense? Once again, the use case of null and undefined is slightly complex. So either we can touch upon that subject later on, or you all can, if you all are intrigued, then you all can obviously search it yourself. Now we'll talk about operators. Firstly, we'll talk about logical operators such as and, or, and no, by the way, this is not a forward slash, this is a bar slash, or like that straight slash, and then the exclamation. Now this means and, this means or, and this means not. Now, in case you are from class 11, then you will know what logical operator, because logical operators have been touched upon very with great in depth in class 11. So if in case you know logic circuits and returns to, even if you do it and explain it, if let's say you are checking for conditions and you have and, which means let's say you want to check.
I think anyone who does C++ would even be able to tell.
Yep, obviously, but then the basically an undefined value does not exist, while null is just an absence in value. Yes, that's the correct answer. Acha. So now logical operators. Let's say you want to compare certain values, and let's say I want to check. Let's say I want something to be done only when two criteria are met. So let's say I want to give people entry to a certain stadium if they are above 15 and they have their ticket. So I'll have a conditional statement like if they are greater, if their age is greater than 15 and they have the ticket. So I'll use this. Which so in this case you'll have both. You want both the cases to be satisfied, right? So if both cases are satisfied, then and returns true, which means you can go ahead with the program, you can execute that bit of code. Otherwise, even if one of the conditions are false, it will return false because you're breaking the entire thing. You want everything to be intact, but it's faulty somewhere, so it will return false, which means you cannot go ahead with that execution. You have to try something else. Now, what about or? Or means either this should work or that should work. So why would you want this? So let's say if you want to open an account in your in a nearby bank, and if they give you the option that either you can use your Aadhaar card or you can use your passport to like maybe to for them so that they can know that it's you, and like it's for a verification method. So they give you the option that either bring the Aadhaar card or the passport or even both will work. So when will or it, so if you have both, then this works. It will return true. If you have either one of them, it will return true. But if you don't have any of them, it will return false. This is the use case of or. Now what about not? Not means it will return true when it is not something. So let's say the teacher is promising the students that if they are not failing, they will be allowed to go on the trip, which means that if they are failing, they will not be allowed to go on the trip. So so you have a variable called
Reverses the condition.
exactly. I'm just giving an analogy. So uh, if you have a boolean value such as boolean, so let's say value equals to true, and if you print not value means exclamation value, it will return false, right? Because it is the complement, which means it's the opposite. So true and false are obviously opposite. And in case you're printing a number, it would be one, it would be zero because false is zero. Does this make sense? I'll go ahead. Now there are some basic operators such as addition, subtraction, multiplication, and division, which I think everyone knows. Now some arithmetic operators which you all might not know is this one. This is the exponentiation operator. So like I can write something like, which means 2 to the power 2, or if I do this as 2 to the power 10. So this is the exponentiation operator. And then we have increment and decrement. If you are from C++, then you will obviously know this. Plus plus means increase a value by 1, and minus minus means decrease the value by 1. Now the incrementation or the decrementation will uh, be executed depending on whether you use it before or after the variable. I'll leave it on you all to check out what I'm talking in regards to these two later on. And not this thing. So let's say we have a variable with the value 10, and I want to add 2 to it. I can do a equals to a plus 2, which means the older value of a is there, and then on top of that add 2. Now what could I do instead of this? I could have done a plus equals to 2, which translates to a equals to a plus 2. Now this can be similarly done for other operators like this, and then modulo, and any other operator which might exist. These are the only ones. Yeah. So this can be done. And then we have assignment operators. So equals to is the assignment operator. I was using this to assign values for each and every variable so far. Now what about double equal to? Double equal to is used for comparing two variables. Okay, but okay, so I'll actually go into the conditional statements beforehand. Okay, so why would you want to use conditional statements? If else, var um, 12 and var 14. Okay. Yeah. So if a is greater than b, console.log a, else okay. Now check this out. So I've created a conditional statement this can be pretty easily interpreted. It means that if A is greater than P, then you'll execute this block, okay, which is console.log A. But if that's not the case, then what could be the other case, that B is greater than A, then you'll log B. Now over here B has a greater value, that is why we got this. Acha. Now let's check this. Does this bit make sense to you all? Like, so these are the four these are some of the comparison operators: greater than, less than, equal to, or greater than, equal to. Like, yep. So these can be used. Obviously, there are others which I'll be discussing now. So you could have different cases. Now we can also have complex if-else structures. So this will either perform this, and if it's false, it will return to the other case. But let's say I want to check multiple cases. Now what will I do in that case? All right. So var a equals to 12, var b equals to 12. All right. Now I'll do console.log a equal to b. Now everyone pay attention in this bit. This is a very important segment. What do you think? Will the output? This is basically comparing it. Huh? A is being compared to b, so it will either be true or false. What do you think? It will be true or false? I want answers in the chat. False. Okay. Yep, it will be false. No. Why do you think it will be false? This is JavaScript. Yes. Actually, why do you all think this is true? Even though one data type is string and the other one is number, still we are getting true. Why do you think that is the case? That is because double equals to only compares the value. When I use this comparison method, this compares the value only. This is 12 and this is 12. Even though these are strings and numbers, that does the same thing because you're only comparing the value. But let's say if I do triple equal to, now what this is triple equal to, by the way, I have something on, that is why it's something like this. What does this print? This prints false. Why? Because now it's not only comparing the value, it's also comparing the data type. The first one is a number, the other one is a string. So now it compared the value which was true, but then it also compared the type which was false. Now the logic over here is that both should be true, but one is true and other is false. That's why it's returning false. This segment makes sense because this is one of the most confusing parts in JavaScript, at least for the beginners. If not, then I'll continue. All right, I'll continue. Okay, now we have not equal to. You have something like if 2 is not equal to 4, console.log and yeah, if 2 is not equal to 4, which is like exclamation equal to, this is again getting changed into this because of my settings, then it like, yeah, so if 2 is not equal to 4, then it will log this, which is obviously true. 2 is not equal to 4, so this will return true, and this got printed over here. But 2 is not equal to 2, which is again now false. In that case, it will return false. Okay. It's not returning, actually it's not returning anything because I have not given the else block over here. If I had written the else block, then it would have given me something. I'm writing anything. So yeah, this is the output for the else block because it's a false block. Now I can have if and then else. Now why would I want that? Var a equals to 12, var b equals to 30, and c equals to 5. Now let's say these three are the sides of a could be the sides of a triangle. I want to check if I am getting a triangle or not. So I will use um, if a is greater than b um, and a is great no a plus b is greater than c. Now yeah, sum of two sets should be greater than third set. If a plus b is greater than c, then console dot log triangle. Okay. So this is a compound case. Now we can also have we want all the three cases to be satisfied, right? Sum of any two sides is greater than the third side, and yeah, and then we'll check this for B and C, and then for C and A, and if that's fulfilling the case, we'll get an output. I'm actually not being able to think of a good use case of if else if right now, so I'm just going to do anything if. Why am I writing? Yeah. The example yeah. Oh, okay. Some of y'all gave me the some cases. Yes, we can. Shivas is saying that we can check if a student is in elementary or middle or high school. I'm not being able to think of any case right now, and I already wrote this code. So I just go ahead with this one. So this checks if A is greater than B. If it's so, that it will print 1. Otherwise, it will. If it's smaller than B, then it's going to print 2. Or if either of the above two cases is not true, then it's going to print 1, 2, 3. So 2, which means that is smaller than B, but let's say this was 30, which means it's neither larger nor smaller, then it will print 1, 2, 3. So now it's earlier it was executing the else if block, but since it's matching neither, it will execute the default block, which is the else block. Now you can have multiple else's. It will begin with an if and it will end with an else, but in between you can have hundreds of else's. Now an alternative of if else construct is switches. Does anyone know what a switch is? A switch in JavaScript. Okay, so they are a better way of handling if else constructs. So let's say I was checking variables, right? So let's say I want to check whether if a variable has different value, let's say we're taking a range of 1 to 100 was inclusive, and if we want something different to happen for each number, then we can have a switch case. So if say such a lots of variable to a test set for equality against a list of, yep. So we can have var num equals to 1, and we'll pass this variable inside this, the num variable. It will check for each and every case. Now let's say if it's in case it's 1, then console.log hello Archishman. And then I can have another case. Now you have over here case 1. Now 1 is a value. Okay, 1. This doesn't mean that this is the first case. It means that in case the value is 1. And now I can have case hello, in which case I want to alert. Now alert is, by the way, I'll show what this does. Okay. Let's check this. Yeah. So the value for this one was console. I passed this variable, and the value for this is 1. So that's why I printed console.log hello Archishman. Yes, I didn't have to break. My bad. Now it won't send that alert. But let's say I change this value. I actually forgot about that break thing. Shivansh reminded me. Okay, so since the value is hello now, I'm just checking whether the value is hello. Now it's satisfying it, so it will send this alert prompt. Yeah, so you're getting this alert hello. Okay, so this is how you use switches. And now we have the default keys. Like in the fs construct, the else construct is like the default one. When nothing works out, you have default. You have the else blocks over here. If nothing works out, then you have the default block. So let's say I have only h over here. So if it's default, then prompt is another command, another function actually. Your age. So let's say this. So the h value doesn't meet either the cases 1 or case hello. So you'll get a prompt over here. Now prompt was a command for taking inputs from the user. Your age. This is asking my age. Now I can enter anything, and this will be sent to the JavaScript file if you are showing the value in a variable as a string. Okay. Now Shivansh will teach the DOM parts. I'm not discussing it myself. Yeah, so this was switch. Why would you want to use switch? You will want to use it in case you are dealing with specific cases or like a single variable. You can also use it for complex variables, like not complex variables, but like multiple variables. But I'll leave it on you all to figure out when to use what. Okay, I'll be moving on this. Conditional statement, and then I'll move on to loops. Okay, so does anyone know what a loop is? Okay, loops are repetitive statement basically. So let's say I want to write console.log hello world, and I want to write this like 5 times. I can do the smart. I can write this in the code 5 times, but then I'll get the output over here 5 times. But then this is not a good practice, right? It's increasing my file size, and it's very inconvenient. Why? Because it's unnecessarily creating it's unnecessarily taking up your memory. How could you create how could you solve this problem? We will use loops. Now there are different types of loops. There's for loop, there's for in, for off, while, and do while. I'll only be discussing for loop and while loop right now, because the other 3 loops, like do while loop, is not used that much. none to my notice at least. And whereas about the other two loops, they are common, they are often used, but then I want you all to check it out on your own. So beginning with while loop. So let's say we have let a equals to true. Now while a console.log hello world. And you can see this goes on printing hello world over here, and it's not going to stop, not unless I enter a break statement. And I think you can see my computer has gone berserk because of this continuous printing. And that was definitely not a good idea. Yep, so you saw that was not a good idea, right? I'll dispose this and go live once again. Okay, so this is printing hello world once, and then it's breaking this. Okay, so while loop, okay, while loops work on either true or false condition, a loop will run when the condition is true, and it will not run when it's false. Now let a equals true, so a is true. So while it's a, which is basically true, it will continue running, which I did, and my computer when my web browser went berserk and it crashed to a point where I had to reload it. Uh, Not reload, but like close the tab and start it again. And yep, and when I added the break statement, though, what it does is it terminates that block of code. Now this while anything inside that while thing is considered to be a block. Okay, we deal with blocks in code because we want to segregate things. So when we add this break statement, so if I had so let's say I have alert over here, it will not get executed because it's after the break statement. But if it was above it, you would have gotten that alert over here. So that's one thing. And yep, so this is where you would want. So let's say you want to increase a value, keep on increasing a value until it reaches a certain mark. So in that case, you will use while loop, and then you will just put a keys. Okay, so I'll do something like this. Let I not let var I equals to 1, and it will print hello world, and I plus plus. It will increase the value of I, and it will check now. Okay, so I want I to be lesser than 10. Okay, if I is now I want it to be greater than, then it will execute this. If I is greater than 10, this is a case where I'm using the if else condition block inside a while loop. Okay, so I want this to break if this is the case. Okay, so you saw that I wanted it to be either 11 or larger. So once it went to 10, it after that it broke. Why? Because the 11th time it tried entering this, it came across this. You can see it over here. Okay, so that's what you get over here. And now there's also one thing called continue. So let's say I want if I modulo remain returns the remainder. If the remainder is equal to 0, so I'm checking if it's odd and I want something, and if it's even I want something. So if it's 0, which means it's an even number, so I will console.log even. else, I'll go with continue. Okay, I'll actually print the value of find distance. And after this case, I'll do I plus equal to 1, and if I is greater than 100, then I'll break. Please add break. Yeah, I'm adding the break statement. Chinash, is there a problem in this code? Because I don't think there is any.
Like in the last if statement, you didn't have the parenthesis.
Oh, okay, yeah. I keep forgetting I'm being a JavaScript one. I'll dispose of start a new one. There's probably some error with the line. Offline. Okay. I'll have to start this one and then for some reason this is broken. I don't know why. I think Shivansh, you should take over. There's some problem on my end right now. Shivansh,
Oh, okay.
yeah, just go over the like finish the while loop, like this portion, the continue bit, and then go with for and the functions. Okay. I'll stop sharing them. Was the bit I taught today clear to everyone? Like, if anyone has any problem, then like please tell that before Shivansh begins, so that Shivansh can go over it again, like in case you all want him to. No. Okay, Shivansh, continue.
Yes. So let's say I want to print counting from 1 to 100, or say 1 to 10. Oh no, wait. The last thing you were teaching was yeah, while loop, right? Yes. Okay.
Yep, while loop, the continue.
N plus plus. So if I run this, okay, so I have Node.js installed. That's why I can run it. Oh, sorry, it's less than. Since I have Node.js installed, that's why I can run it in the terminal. So you can see 0 to 10, it's printing all of that. Now, so that's while loop. Similarly, we can. So yeah, the thing is that the while loop will keep on executing till the condition inside of these parentheses is true. Now, the other way we can do this is for let I equal to 0. Okay, so you can see it's working the same way. And what I'm doing here is that the first statement, which is here, is executed once. So I'm initializing a variable I and the value is 0. Then I'm telling the condition that while this condition is true, keep on executing this block of code. And then I'm telling what to do after each iteration. So once this block of code is executed, then increment the value of I by 1. So it will keep on doing this till this condition is true. So yeah, and let me show you a proper use case. So if I do left array b 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, array dot length, and just if you are coming from C++, so in C++ we have length like this. It's a function, but in JavaScript it's a property. And so if we want to print an array, so since the index of an array starts from 0, so it will be from 0, I equal to 0. So from here it will go up till the length of the array. So actually the length of the array is 5, but the index of the array will be 4 because it starts from 0. So this is 0, 1, 2, 3, 4, and array length is 5, so it will go up to 4. So this is the way we iterate through an array, and it will be incremented. So if I run this, you can see that each of the element is printed. And similarly, if I want, I can change the value plus equal to, let's say, 5 array. So yeah, so this is how we deal with individual elements in an array. So that's for loop. Now moving on, now we have functions. So as you know, like, let me give you an example. So let me go down here. So let's say I write a program to tell if a number is prime or not. So let num be equal to, for now, 5. Now to check if a number is prime, what I will do is that I will have a for loop for let I equal to 2. I will be less than num I plus plus. Now if, and I will also have a boolean is prime, which will originally be true, but if we find that the number is divisible by any other number other than 1 and the number itself, then we will change the value of s prime to false. So if num modulo I is equal to 0, so which means that if we divide number by I and the remainder is 0, which means the number is divisible by I, so then s prime will be false. Yeah, so this is the basic thing, and now we can print. So now I also want to introduce one more thing, which is ternary operator. So what ternary operator is that? Like I this is the best thing of JavaScript which I like. So the number is prime, or else it's not prime. So what the ternary operator means is that if this, now here we can have 2 is greater than 5. We can have any expression which evaluates to either true or false. If is prime, so if is prime will be either true or false. So if this will be true, so this is the ternary operator. If this is true, uh, the first value will be will be replaced, will be used, and if it is false, then after the colon, the second value will be used. So this is kind of expression and declaration, but I will not go into that for now. But yeah, you get the one. Like we can only use ternary operator if we are initializing some value. So if I do let, okay, let me skip that for now. So I get you get the point, right? That ternary operator, here's the condition. If it is true, the first value will be taken, or else the second value will be taken. So if I execute this code, it will, okay. Oh no. Wait. Console.log. Yeah. The number is prime. Now, if I put here, let's say 6, it's not prime. Now, let's say I am doing this 10 times. So, if I do it this way, then let's say I have number 2, number 5. So I have to make number 2, then number 5. So I will have to write the same code 10 times. So what instead we can do is that we can have functions. So there are two ways. Let's go with the old one first. So we write function first, then let's say is prime. Now I'm commenting this out. Value which will be dynamically given when I will be calling the function. So let's say num for now. Sorry. Yeah, so okay, also if like here I only had uh, a single line of statement. So if we are running for loop, or we are using if statement or anything like that, while loop, we generally use a curly bracket. But if we only have a single statement, then we can skip that. We can directly write it here. And since in this if statement also I only had a single line of code, so I didn't write the curly bracket. So yeah, now whenever we call a function, we return something. So return false. I will be explaining how this works. Let me just show you once. Return true. And now is prime of num. Okay. So what I'm doing is that I've initialized a function is prime, which will take a number. Now, whenever we like here, I have just defined the function. If I just define the function, it will do nothing. Like if I've defined the function and I've defined the number, if I run it, just a second. Yeah, if I run it, you can see that nothing is shown here. So if I need, like if I want the function to be executed, then I have to call it. So here I have called it. So I've written the name and then parentheses. Since here I had one parameter, so I have to pass one argument here. Okay, so I wanted the number from the user. Let's say if I have a function to print hello, then it will not require any yeah, then it will not require any user input or like any data from the user, like at the time of calling the function. So if I write print hello, that's it. If I just run it, hello is printed. Now since we wanted the number, so we wrote this here. Next, when we are running it, you can see that we are starting with 2. Now this logic is very basic, so this is totally maths why I wrote this. And next what I'm doing is, if the number modulo I, so in case the number is divisible by any other number than itself and 1, I'm returning false. And whenever a function returns something, the execution stops at that point of time. So as soon as it returns false, it will not go on. Like if I let me do one thing. Console.log I, and I will return it prime bool equal to true, and prime bool is false here. And what I will do is I will return is prime bool. Yeah. So if I run this, you can see it is going like it is going 2, then 3. Like wait a second, it is 6, right? So yeah, it is going for 2, then 3, and but what is happening is that as soon as just a second. Okay. Okay, I guess it's something because of JavaScript. It is like for efficiency, there may be something. Okay. Maybe for efficiency, they have done something so that the execution is stopping before actually it should end to save the time. Maybe the JavaScript is written that way, but it should not have ended. It should have gone till 5. But anyways, so you get the point, right? Let me just comment this out. And as soon as I return false, now if you can see when I was not returning false, it was going up till 3, at least till 3. But now it's okay. It's not. It's going only till 2. As soon as it finds that 6 is divisible by 2, it is returning false, and at that point of time, the execution is stopped. So that is a function. Now in ECMAScript 6, that is AS6, a new method of declaring function was introduced, which was arrow function. So it actually helps us to write the like making the syntax much cleaner and shorter. So this whole line of 4, I can write it like let is prime, or I should say const is prime is equal to. Now this is basically equal to and then greater than symbol is prime. Then let me just yeah. So here I have now these two are exactly the same thing, this and this, but I will tell the benefits of using arrow function in just a moment. So now if I want to pass any parameter, so here you used to write it here in arrow function, we write it here. Now if we have just one parameter, then we can delete this parenthesis. It will work that way also, but only if it has just one parameter. Then the rest of the thing is exactly the same, just the way of declaring the function, like the syntax is a little different. Now if we talk about this function print hello world, so we can write it print hello world is equal to and this just a second. Was I disconnected? Anyways, uh, this, oh, like I was audible, right? Yeah, okay. So this is exactly same as this, but now if you don't have any parameter, then it's not like you can skip this. If there is no parameter, then we need to have an empty parenthesis, and this is it. So it helps us. Let's say you want to multiply is equal to we. Now if you want to return something, and if it's just one value, and you can return it in the same line, like if I have to do something like a equal to a plus 2, and then I have to do it like this, then it will not work. But if I just have to return it in the single, like if I can return it on the first line of the function itself, then I can even it's optional to write return. I can write a return, but this is exactly the same, but I can remove the return and it will work just fine. So that was arrow function. Now moving on. Now any doubt relating to function? Okay, so I guess no. Then what we can do is that let's move on to JavaScript events. So here I have a basic HTML code. Let me comment all of this out. Or let me make another file. And let me link it here. Now, so here I have a very basic HTML code. Let me zoom out a little bit. So here I have a h1 tag and then 3 paragraphs with class of para, and one of them had an ID of para1. So let's move on to JavaScript events, right? So let me, for now, let's write inside of HTML only the JavaScript. So let me define a function. So let on hover is equal to document dot get element by ID. Okay, let me do something else. Let's for now use console.log because I will be teaching that a bit later. And here let's say mouse. Okay, then I guess I should open it here. Okay, so let's say I have this, okay, this paragraph. I'm adding an JavaScript event. In this JavaScript event, what I'm saying is that if I click on this paragraph, what you need to do is that you need to call this function on hover. So if I click on this paragraph, just a second, I need to refresh. Yeah, you can see that it is printing mouse, right? So similarly, we have on mouse down. So as soon as I not even click, as soon as I uh, just click and without releasing, or whenever I put the mouse down, it invokes that function. Then we have, like, there are tons of JavaScript events. So on mouse move as well. So if I move the mouse even on the paragraph, like, you can see that it's printing mouse. So that's JavaScript event. Next, what we have is DOM manipulation. So you can go and check out, there are many others like on change, on mouse out, on key down, just like this. Now let me comment this out. Yeah, now moving on to DOM manipulation. So DOM manipulation is basically now what is DOM? So whenever you load a web page, this whole web page is the like okay, let's not discuss that. This is the document. Okay, so whatever you see inside of this, like from you can understand it like whatever the below this URL bar, from here to here, whatever is there, this whole is document. Now document is kind of a tree. So if I go on and search document tree structure, so this is what document actually looks like. It's kind of a tree and has nodes and all of that stuff. But just for your reference, like here's the root element, and then it goes on inside of a, like let's say you have UL, then inside of that LI, then siblings and all of that. But for now, you can just to show you that it is actually a tree structure. Now, so this is DOM. Now, how do we target a, let's start with finding a specific element. Okay, so to target a specific element, we first need to find it, right? So let para1. Now, this is the document. So we are targeting the document element first. Now we are asking it. So there are many ways of getting an element. So one of the way is get element by ID. And now what we need to do is we can put in the ID of para1, and we can console log para1. Let me open it with the live server. Okay, here it is. So we asked it to get this para1 element and then console, yeah, log it in the console. So here we have the first paragraph. Now this is a get element by ID. Similarly, we have get elements. Now see, here we have element. I like, you know that inside of a HTML page we only have one element, like the ID is unique, so only one element will be having a specific ID. But class name, like multiple elements can have the same class name. So that's why it's get elements. So here is the S, get elements by class name, and here we can have just para. So here you can see, here we have HTML collection. So you can understand it like an object, array object, which JavaScript returns whenever we call this function get elements by class name. So there were three elements. First was this para1, the second paragraph, and the third paragraph. And like here is a property of, like, whenever, as I told you, in JavaScript we don't call like this. The length is not a function, length is a property, right? So you can see here we have the length property, this length, which we are asking for in the second statement. So that is whereas, and now we can target individual elements like this. Okay, so the first element of the paras, then we can target the second element, and so on. Actually, this is the third element because the index starts from 0. So that is how we get with the help of class names. Then we have get elements by tag name. So we can write in para. Okay, so it will get all the elements which are of paragraph. So all the paragraph elements, it will get all of them, and these are okay. So these are it is basically the same because, but if let's say I have another paragraph M20, so get element by tag name will get all the 4 of them, but by class name it will only get the first 3 because the first 3 had the class name of para. Okay, so that is get element by class name, and then we have with the help of query selectors. So if I write here p dot or p hash para1, so what this means is that paragraph with the ID of para1. Okay, so this is query selector. Similarly, we have query selector all. So if I do p dot para, so we have 3 such paragraphs, right? So now it will return a node list. Like now, similarly, we can target individual elements from here as well. So these are different ways of getting the HTML elements. Now, once we have the HTML elements, what can we do with the help of JavaScript? So we can now in DOM manipulation, we can change the HTML content. So let's say if I want to, okay, let me do for let I now paragraph I, what I will be doing is that it's inner text. Inner text will be equal to I. So what I'm doing is that inner text is the text node. Okay, you can understand it just that if I target this paragraph, the inner text will be this much. Okay. Now what I'm doing is that I'm targeting individual paragraphs and I'm replacing it with their index. So you can see it is 0, 1, 2. Okay. Now that was inner text. Similarly, we have inner HTML also. Let me cover it right now only. And what inner HTML means is that you can put in the text as well, but the thing is that you can also put in, okay. Now, okay, let me also cover template literals here right now. Now, what template literals means is that okay, so you can see it's 0, 1, 2. Now they are bold because this is inner HTML. If I do it in a text, it will be treated as text. Okay. Now, what template literals are is that we can do, like, if I was to do it without using template literal, I would have done it something like, okay, this is also the same thing, but what template literals help us with is that we don't have to concatenate. If we replace these single inverted or double inverted commas with these backticks, so backticks are the kind of symbol which is a key which is just below the escape key on your keyboard. So if we use this backticks, what will happen is that we can use the variables which are in the JavaScript. So I was a variable inside of the JavaScript, so we can use that by using this syntax of dollar and curly brackets. So inside of that, I can put in I can also do I is equal to 0. So it will evaluate this expression, and here I get the evaluated answer: true, false, false. Now inside of this, we can do many things like I is 0, I is not 0. So this is why I like a ternary operator. So in a single line we can do that, or do this: I is 0 and I is not 0. Okay, so this is a very silly example, but you get the point, right? You can you get the way, you get the point how we can use it in real life. So that is inner text. So we did this. Okay, we did inner text, inner HTML. We can change the value of attributes as well. So let's say I do something like paras I dot id. Now I will be changing, I will be, if there is an already existing id, what I can do is that I can either change it or I can add the id. So I will be doing para js id of I. Okay, so this is now if I go here and see this, here is the id, like it is dynamically changed by javascript, right? Para js id 0, and this way. So this is how you can get id. Now another thing which is related to your project, which we gave last month actually. So how can we change the class name, a class, right? So if we get the property class list, and then we sorry, yeah. So if we get the class list, then we can now, and we'll be talking only about the main ones. So we can add a class. So let's say JS class. So now if I see this element, it has the class JS class as well. We can remove a class as well. So let's say I want to remove the para class. So now you can see that the class attribute has no value because this class was removed. And we can also have toggle. Now I will talk about toggle a little later when we will do event listener. So that's how we can change. Now let me also tell about set attribute. So here we tell the name of the attribute. Let's say, what should I say? Let's say if this was an image, then we can have src, and then it can be image src. So this can be replaced by let's say an element of an array which has all the all the links to the source source images files. So here we have, this was dynamically added by javascript. So src is equal to image src. So that is it. Now let's move on to creating elements. Okay, yeah, also we also have style. How can we change the style? So dot style. So if we use the style property, we can change the css. So let's say we want to change the color. Color can be, let's say, red. Now you can see color of all these have changed to red, or let's say let colors equal to red, yellow, and green. And then we can do something like colors of I. So this way all of them will be of different color. So that is how. And there are few css properties like background image, right? So we can't have this hyphen here. So what instead what we do is that we remove this hyphen and we change this to camel case. So we capitalize this I of image, so it becomes the background image, and now we can define it the way we want. So that is how we change CSS. Now creating elements. So I guess this is the last thing. Okay, event listener. So yeah, so this is how we added like here, like on mouse move. What we did was inside of the HTML we declared it, right? But if I want to add an event listener, like what event listener is that it listens to the event, right? So these were the events like on mouse move. So if I do something like document dot get element by ID para1 dot now this is targeting to this first paragraph. Now I want to add an event listener. So what I will be doing is that add event listener. Now the first thing we need to do is we need to tell what kind of event I want to listen to. So let's say for now I'm using click. So whenever I click, now the second thing is the function. So let me define the function for now here. Let on click function, and what I will be doing is that document dot get element by document dot body. Let me target the body directly. Dot style dot background will be red. Okay, and here we need to pass a function. So if now the thing you need to keep in mind is that here I'm not calling the function. I'm not doing like I'm not I don't have this parenthesis. If I do this parenthesis, it will runs it will the function will be executed once but not all the time. So when I don't have this parenthesis, what I'm doing is that I'm not running executing it, but I'm uh, passing this value of this function, like what the function is actually doing. So this value is being passed when uh, I'm doing like when I'm not having the parenthesis here. So if I do this, so you can see when I clicked on the first paragraph, the color of the background color of the body changed. Now we can replace this on click function with this. So what this is, if this is an anonymous function, like we don't name it, but it's a function and we are just passing it. It's we don't have a name for it, but we just need it to pass it. So instead of declaring it like on click function and then passing on click function here, we are directly defining it here without any name. And this is how we will do it most of the time. We don't declare it outside and then pass it here. We generally do it this way, and it will work the same way. There's no difference. Okay, so that's event listener. And finally, the last topic is uh, adding HTML elements through JavaScript. So let's say I have another paragraph, which will be document. Now, how we create an element is using document dot create element. And here I can, let's say, okay, let me make it div. So here I have a div. Now what I will be doing is that if I want to add text to this div, I need to add a text node. So what you can understand it like, if there is the div. So if I have the div, I have created this part, but to add text, we just can't add text just that way. We need to create a text node. So let div text node equal to document dot create text node, and inside of this, we can pass in whatever value, whatever text we want. So this is added by JS. Okay, and now this is not it. Now we need to add this text node to the div. So how we do it is we target the div dot append child append child, and we pass in div text node. And now we have this div element ready. The final thing we need to do is that we need to place this inside of our body. So we can target the body directly, document.body dot append child, and then we can pass in the div element, and that's it. So you can see this is added by JavaScript. So that's how we add an element. And the last thing is that what we can do, I had an on-click function, yeah, this. So let me show it this way. Now, when I will click on the first paragraph, I want to delete this div. So how I can do it is that we can, let me move it down. And how we can do it is like div dot remove. And we can call this function. And when I will click here, you see the div is no more in the HTML document, it's deleted. So that was it for this session. Any doubt so far, like whatever I've covered till now? Okay, I guess not. Okay, chat. Okay, so yeah, so I guess that's it for this session. Sorry for, okay, oh my god, it was about 2.5 session. So yeah, that's it for this session. Go and have dinner. Good night. And yeah,
Yeah,
so
I was waiting for that.
sorry for having that long session. And
Yeah, yeah.
in case you missed out some part, we will be uploading the recording, so
Sure,
that's not a
sure,
problem.
sure.
Yeah, so thank you all for joining. I'm ending the meeting now.